midnight, the world's most honest hour. The sun's lies fade, the shadows' truths emerge. Elias felt only one reality as he sat behind the wheel of his 1998 Honda Civic. The cold. The heater was on full blast, the fans whirring loudly. But this cold came from somewhere beneath his skin, from his bones, from his soul. In his pocket was a crumpled newspaper ad. He had carried it in his wallet for 3 days, reading it perhaps 100 times. Night watchman and cashier wanted. Route 9, Miller's fuel station. No experience necessary. Cash payment. Cash payment. Those were the 2 most magical words in Elias' life. 3 months of unpaid rent, the bailiffs at his door, and a negative balance at the bank had brought him to this point. 20 miles outside the city, Elias parked the car. When he turned off the engine, silence fell on him like a sledgehammer. To the edge where civilization ended and the forest and darkness began, Elias parked the car. When he turned off the engine, silence fell on him like a sledgehammer. The station's neon lights flickered with a hissing sound. The C in the open sign was dead. It read AIK. Maybe it was a sign. Maybe this place wasn't open anymore, but left behind. The leftovers of the world. He took a deep breath. He opened the door. The wind slapped him in the face. The smell of gasoline. Sharp, acrid, dizzying. But beneath that smell was something else. Wet earth, rotten leaves, and metal, the smell of rusty, old, bloody metal. He walked towards the station's market. The sensors above the glass doors detected him, and the doors slid open with a heavy groan. Inside, it was like a place where time had stopped. Fluorescent lights cast a sickly, yellowish glow. The shelves were full, but the products looked faded, as if they had been there for years. A man stood behind the counter. Mr. Miller. The man had no age. His face hung like a melted candle. His skin was gray, as if dust flowed through his veins instead of blood. His eyes were like dull glass marbles. When he looked at Elias felt not like a person, but like an object. "You must be Elias," said Mr. Miller. His voice was rustling, like dried leaves being blown by the wind. "Yes, sir," said Elias, clearing his throat. "I came for the ad. You're hired. No questions. No interview. No ID check." The man just left a rusty set of keys on the counter. The sound of metal hitting glass echoed in the empty shop. "Your shift starts at midnight. It ends at 6:00 a.m. I'll come in the morning. If you leave the money in the cash register untouched, you'll get your envelope." Elias was surprised. Was it that easy? Is there anything special I need to do, like cleaning inventory?" Mr. Miller picked up his coat, an old, patched trench coat. He walked toward the door. His footsteps made no sound. Just as he was about to leave, he stopped. He didn't turn around. He just turned his head slightly to the side. There's a list on the counter, Elias. Read it, memorize it, and no matter what, don't deviate from that list. Mr. Miller left. Elias looked out the window. The man didn't get in his car. He didn't drive off. He just walked into the darkness behind the station. He stepped out of the streetlight's glow and vanished, as if the darkness had swallowed him. Or he was part of the darkness and had returned to where he belonged. Elias shrugged. "Weird old man," he muttered. He went behind the counter. He sat down in the cashier's chair. The chair creaked. In front of him was a cash register, an old keypad model. He sat down in the cashier's chair. The chair creaked. In front of him was the cash register, an old keypad model, and next to the register was a piece of paper, stained with coffee, its edges burnt. Elias picked up the paper. The writing was in shaky handwriting, as if written in a hurry, perhaps in fear. Miller Gas Station, night shift protocol. Between midnight and 4 a.m. Lock the automatic doors manually, no matter what. If you see someone outside, if they ask for help, if they cry, if they beg, don't open it. Only serve them through the armored night window on the side. If a black, unbranded sedan with tinted windows pulls up to pump number 3, ignore it. Don't look outside. Don't try to read the license plate. Wait for the receipt to print, and keep your eyes forward. What you see in that car is not something you want to see. The shop phone never rings more than twice. If it rings a third time, don't answer it. Unplug it and wait. The voice on the other end of the line may sound like your mother. It may sound like your father, but it's not them. They just mimic their voices. If you hear a child crying in the hallway with the toilets, don't go there. Turn the radio up all the way. Wait until the sound stops. Mercy is your greatest enemy here. If a cop from the sheriff's department comes, look at his badge. If his name is Evans, give him free coffee, but don't look him in the eye. If his name is Holloway, immediately hide in warehouse 2, and don't come out until he leaves. If you know how to pray, pray. If you see that the chip bags in the food aisle have been moved, don't fix them. They like where they are. If you mess with the order, they'll fix you. Elias read the list and smiled. A bitter smile. Great, he said. They're playing a joke on the new guy. Urban legends, scary stories. He wanted to crumple up the paper and throw it aside, but he couldn't. A voice inside him told him he had to keep that paper. He folded the paper and placed it in his shirt pocket over his heart. The clock struck midnight. When the numbers on the digital clock changed, the air inside the store suddenly grew heavy. The pressure shifted. His ears popped. The monotonous hum of the air conditioner. Motor ceased, replaced by a deep, absolute silence. It was as if the world had held its breath. The first 20 minutes passed in silence. Elias began wandering the aisles. He was bored. He went to the candy aisle to get a pack of gum. He was looking around. The store was old but looked clean. However, as he approached the shelves, the incorrect details began to catch his eye. The brands on the cans were familiar, but the logos were reversed. Campbell's. Soup wasn't spelled S-L-E-P-M-C. The letters were correct, but the logo was a mirror. Image. The cola cans weren't red, but a dark purple, almost black. The writing on them resembled English, but upon closer inspection, the letters were a meaningless mix of Cyrillic and ancient Greek alphabets. Elias rubbed his eyes. "I'm tired," he said to himself. His voice echoed in the empty shop. "I'm just tired. Sleep deprivation is playing tricks on my mind." He went to the machine to make a cup of coffee. The coffee was pitch black and thick as tar. As he filled the cup, he noticed movement outside the glass. He looked up. He went over to the machine to make some coffee. The coffee was pitch black and thick as tar. As he filled the cup, he noticed movement outside the window. He looked up. Route 9 was deserted. The asphalt stretched out like a gray river under the moonlight. But in the fields across the road, among the cornstalks taller than a man, something was moving. But in the fields across the road, something was stirring among the cornstalks taller than a man. There was no wind. The trees weren't moving, but the corn was swaying as if a giant snake were slithering through it. The sound of cornstalk snapping could be heard even through the closed windows. Snap, snap, snap. Elias looked closely. He saw 2 yellow dots in the darkness. They were like eyes, but they were too high up to belong to an animal. They glowed about 3 meters above the ground, and they were very far apart. Such a wide head couldn't belong to a human or a bear. "An owl," Elias whispered. He was trying to convince himself. Just an owl, perched on a pole. "An owl," Elias whispered. He was trying to convince himself. Just an owl, perched on a pole, but there was no pole there. There was only emptiness. He quickly turned back to the counter. His heart was racing. He sat down on the chair. His hand went into his shirt pocket. He took out the list. Item 1, lock the doors. Elias immediately reached for the remote control panel under the counter. He pressed the lock button. The locking mechanism on the doors clicked shut with a metallic, harsh clack. He was inside. He was safe. Or so he thought. Time 01:15. The silence was broken by the sound of the phone. The old-fashioned, rotary, red phone on the back wall of the shop. Ring. The sound wasn't digital. It was an old, mechanical, irritating sound with a metal bell inside. Elias jumped. His hand went to the phone. Then he stopped. Rule 3. It doesn't ring more than twice. Reading, second ring. Elias made a move to pick up the receiver. It could be a customer. Someone. Stuck on the road. Maybe his boss, Mr. Miller, would say he had forgotten something. His hand touched the receiver. Cold plastic. Reading, third ring. Elias froze. His hand hung over the receiver. The phone didn't stop ringing. Reading, fourth ring. Reading, fifth ring. Elias slowly withdrew his hand. The phone rang insistently. The sound grew louder with each ring, more distorted. It was as if the metal bell inside the phone was shaking with rage. What did the rule say? Pull the plug. Elias followed the phone cord with trembling hands. The cord ran under the counter, through a dusty maze to a wall outlet. He bent down. He yanked the cord out of the outlet. The phone fell silent. The sudden silence was more disturbing than the noise. Elias took a deep breath. He wiped the sweat from his forehead. Just a glitch, he said. Old lines, rural area, these things happen. Just as he was about to stand up and sit back down, the phone, its plug pulled out. Its cord coiled on the floor like a snake. Rang again, ring. But this time the sound was not a metallic ringing. This sound was a human voice. Someone was imitating the ringing with their mouth. Ringing, ringing. The voice was Elias' own voice, a higher-pitched, more mocking copy of his own voice. Elias screamed and moved away from the phone. His back hit the back shelves. Canned food cans fell to the floor. The sound was coming from the phone itself, not the receiver. Answer it. Elias, your mother is calling. Ring, answer it. Elias picked up a can from the floor and threw it at the phone. The can hit the phone, knocking the device to the ground. The phone shattered. The receiver flew one way, the body another. The sound stopped. Elias clutched his chest and collapsed to the floor. His heart felt like it was trying to break through his ribcage. This isn't real, he said. I'm going crazy. There's a gas leak. I'm getting carbon monoxide poisoning. Yeah, that makes sense. The ventilation is broken. He stood up. He wanted to wash his face. He wanted to go to the bathroom. But then he stopped. Rule 4. If you hear a sound from the bathroom. He didn't go to the bathroom. He didn't go to the sink. He just waited behind the counter in that small, safe area. It was 1:45 a.m. Outside, blue and red lights flashed. The station interior lit up like a disco ball. A police car slowly pulled into the station. Elias relaxed. His shoulders dropped. Police, government, law, security, logic. Thank God, he said. Something's wrong here, officer. Get me out of here. He immediately wanted to run to the door and unlock it. He moved his hand toward the button, but his finger stopped before it touched it. His mind reminded him of that damn list. Rule 5. Look at the badge. If the name is Evans, give him coffee. If the name is Holloway, hide. Elias waited behind the glass. A tall, broad-shouldered officer got out of the police car. His hat shaded his face. His uniform was razor sharp, not a single wrinkle. His boots were so shiny they reflected the neon lights. The officer approached the door with heavy steps. With each step, his boots made a clack, clack sound. He came to the window. He brought his face close to the glass and smiled. "Hey kid, open the door for me. I need some coffee. The roads are long tonight." His voice was reassuring. It was a fatherly tone, an uncle's, a father's voice. Elias approached the door. The metal badge on the officer's chest was shining. Elias narrowed his eyes and looked at the name tag. Officer Evans. Elias took a deep breath. He exhaled all the air from his lungs. Evans, the good one. He unlocked the door. The automatic doors slid open. "Thanks," Officer Evans said as he stepped inside. But the moment Evans entered, the shop's atmosphere changed. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. Elias' breath began to vaporize. "Tough night?" asked the officer, walking toward the counter. "You could say that," said Elias. His voice was trembling. "I had a problem with the phone, and I think there's a gas leak." Officer Evans smiled, but this smile was wrong. His mouth was too wide, his lips were too thin, and his teeth, he had too many teeth. It was as if he had 2 rows of teeth in his mouth. "The phones are always problematic here," said Evans. "There's no gas leak, son. It's just that the air in here is a little thick. Can you get me a coffee? Black, no sugar, just like life." Elias turned around. He headed for the coffee machine. With his back to the officer, he felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. It was as if a predator was waiting behind him. He filled the coffee. He placed the cup on the counter. "No charge, officer," said Elias. "On the house." Evans took the coffee. He brought the steaming, boiling coffee to his mouth. He didn't seem to feel the heat. He raised the cup and drank it in one gulp. The glug, glug sound as it passed his throat was like the sound coming from a sink drain. "Delicious," said Evans. He crushed the cup. Then he leaned toward Elias. His face was very close to Elias. Elias remembered the rule. Don't look him in the eye. Elias fixed his gaze on the officer's chin, that perfectly shaven chin. "Why aren't you looking me in the eye, son?" Evans asked. His voice was no longer fatherly. It was more metallic, more raspy, more threatening. "Are you shy? Or are you hiding something?" His voice was no longer fatherly. It was more metallic, more raspy, more threatening. "Are you shy? Or are you hiding something?" Elias was sweating. "Out of respect, sir," he lied. "My father always said to show respect to a law man." Evans chuckled. The sound was like dry bones rubbing together. "Smart kid, your father was a smart man." He touched Elias' shoulder. His hand was very heavy. "Let me give you some advice, Elias. Watch pump number 3 tonight. He's coming. He's on his way. And he's very hungry. Feed him. Otherwise, he'll feed himself." Evans turned around. He walked to the door. As he walked, Elias noticed in horror that the officer's legs were bent backwards from the knees. He wasn't walking like a human, but like a stork or a horse. He walked out the door. He got into his car. Without sounding the siren, he drove away silently. Elias locked the doors immediately. His trembling had taken over his entire body. It was 2:20 a.m. Elias decided to eat something to calm down. His blood sugar was low. He had to stop his hands from shaking. He went to the chips aisle. The packages had been moved. Where the Doritos had been, there were now Ruffles. And the Lay's packages were upside down. All of them were upside down. Rule 6. Do not rearrange the chip packages. Elias reached out but pulled his hand back. Okay, he said. Okay, your way. He took a package of crackers. As he opened the package, his eye caught the expiration date. EXP, September 14, 1999. Elias dropped the package. He picked up another one, a chocolate bar. EXP, May 5, 1988A. Cola bottle. EXP, 1974. But they all looked new. The packages were shiny, the colors vivid, no dust. The chocolate was soft. Elias realized in that moment that the place he was in wasn't a geographical location. This wasn't just a gas station. This was a pocket of time forgotten, a tear in reality, a limbo. He went to the newspaper stand. He took the top newspaper. It must have been today's paper. He had seen the job advertisement in today's paper, hadn't he? He took the newspaper in his hand. The date was today. But the headline read in large, black letters. Horror AT local gas station. Night watchman, Elias, THORN, missing. The photo below the story showed Miller gas station, cordoned off with police tape. And the photo of the missing employee, the photo was blurry, black and white. But Elias recognized that shirt, that plaid flannel shirt, the shirt he was wearing right now. Elias threw the newspaper to the floor. He backed away. His back hit the counter. This is impossible, he shouted. His voice cracked. I'm here, I'm alive, I'm breathing. He looked at his hands. They were trembling. But they were there, they were real, they were bone. Just then, the sensor lights outside flashed. A vehicle entered the station's area silently, like a ghost. A black sedan, matte black, no make, no model. The windows pitch black, headlights off. Its wheels seemed to glide without touching the asphalt. The vehicle moved slowly forward. It passed pump number 1. It passed pump number 2. And it stopped right in front of pump number 3. Elias' blood ran cold. His heart was pounding in his throat. Rule 2. If a black sedan pulls up to pump number 3, Elias immediately crouched under the counter. He buried his head in his hands. Don't look, he told himself. Elias immediately crouched under the counter. He buried his head in his hands. Don't look, he told himself. Don't look, pretend you don't see it. But man is curious. Damned curiosity. Elias could see outside from the edge of the counter, from the mirror of the cigarette stand. He watched the car in the reflection, the rear window of the car. It was slowly lowering. There was no mechanical sound, The glass seemed to be melting away, and the darkness inside. Even the station's powerful neon lights couldn't illuminate the interior of that car. The darkness rippled inside the car like a solid substance, like a liquid. Then something reached out from within that darkness. Elias watched from under the counter. From that faint reflection in the cigarette stand's mirror, the thing reaching out from the car's open window was a hand, but it wasn't a human hand. Pale gray in color, it was swollen like a corpse that had been in water for days. The fingers, God, the fingers, were impossibly long. They had extra joints. They bent like a spider's legs, grasping at the air. The hand slowly slid out. The arm following it stretched as if it had no bone structure. There was at least 2 meters between the car and the pump. But that arm stretched like a rubber rope, and grabbed the nozzle of pump number 3. Elias covered his mouth to keep from gagging. His stomach was churning. What he saw was beyond what his mind could accept. The entity placed the pump nozzle into the car's tank. Elias looked at the monitor right in front of him. The pump had started working, but what was flowing on the meter wasn't gasoline. The liter gauge wasn't moving. It was stuck at 0 liters. Only the price gauge was rising, and it was rising very fast. $10, $25, $60, $100. The car wasn't taking gas. The car was sucking the station's energy. Elias noticed the ceiling lights dimming. The fluorescent lights began to flicker and shimmer. The hum of the refrigerators slowed, turning into a muffled growl. Elias even felt his own life force being drained, dizziness, weakness. That car was sucking the life out of everything around it. Eye contact. Suddenly, the pump stopped. The click echoed like the crack of a whip in that deadly silence. The long, gray arm placed the gun back in its holster, and slowly, like a snake retreating into its hole, curled back into the car's darkness. Elias took a deep, shaky breath. It's gone, he thought. It's fed and it's leaving. He slowly raised his head. He shouldn't look now. The rule was clear, but he couldn't control his gaze. He had to look at that damn mirror. Now there was a face on the rear window of the car. The face was pressed against the glass. It was Elias' face, but it wasn't a reflection in a mirror. A reflection would have eyes. This face's eye sockets were empty. There were only deep, pitch-black holes. And its mouth was torn all the way to its ears. There were no lips. There were no teeth. There was only that huge, perverted grin that looked like a wet, red piece of flesh. The entity tapped on the glass with its long finger. Tap, tap, tap. Elias screamed and fell backward onto the cigarette shelves. He toppled over the packs. Go away, he shouted. His voice echoed through the store. Leave me alone. The car didn't respond. The engine wouldn't start. The vehicle slipped silently into the darkness, just as it had arrived, its wheels not turning, as if it were a block of ice. Elias stood up, trembling. The cash register suddenly started up with an electronic screech and printed a receipt. Elias took the receipt in his hand. The paper was warm. There was no gas amount or liters on the receipt. There was only one line written in thick black ink. Not yet. Elias crumpled the receipt and threw it away. I have to get out of here, he said. I don't care about the money. I don't care about Miller. I'm getting in the car and leaving. To hell with it. He headed for the back door, the staff exit. It opened onto the parking lot. He turned the handle. It wasn't locked. He kicked the door open. He expected the cold air outside. But when the door opened, there was no parking lot behind the door. There was no night. Behind the door was the inside of the station, the chip aisle. Elias stood there in shock. He walked through the door. He was back next to the chip aisle. He looked behind him. The door he had come out of was now the door he had entered. The space had folded in on itself, like a Möbius strip. He tried again. He ran to the main door. He unlocked it. He burst outside. But the moment he took a step, he found himself back in the store's back room, the storage area. There was no exit. The rest of the world had vanished. Only Miller's fuel station remained. 3:00 a.m. Elias now understood he couldn't escape. He had to survive until dawn, until 6:00 a.m. Maybe when the sun rose, this damn spell would be broken. He went behind the counter. He picked up the dusty baseball bat standing in the corner. Come on, he said, trembling. Whatever you are, come. Just then he heard it. At first he thought it was the wind. Then the sound of water coming from the pipes. But the sound became clearer, ingala. It was coming from that dark hallway with the toilets. A baby crying. But this wasn't a normal cry. The sound seemed to skip like a broken record, then suddenly speed up and slow down in an ingala. Elias' hair stood on end. Rule 4. If you hear crying from the bathroom, don't go there. Turn up the radio. Elias immediately reached for the old radio under the counter. He turned the knob. Come on, he whispered, work, damn it. The radio crackled. Elias tried to adjust the frequency. Music, a human voice. Anything. But no music came from the radio. The sound coming from the radio was the same as the crying in the hallway, only much louder, much more distorted. From the speakers rose that mechanical, digital baby cry. INGAA. Elias turned off the radio. He pulled the plug, but the sound didn't stop. The radio continued to operate without electricity. Elias grabbed the radio and threw it against the wall. The device shattered, plastic pieces scattering everywhere. The sound finally stopped, but the sound in the hallway was now closer. The baby's cry had changed. It wasn't crying anymore. It was laughing. That disturbing, mocking laugh an adult man makes when imitating a baby with a deep voice. Elias reached the end of the corridor, baseball bat in hand. He knew he shouldn't go in there, but the sound was calling him. It was as if invisible hooks had been thrown into his mind, and those hooks were pulling him toward the bathroom door. The hallway light flickered. Yellow, gray, yellow, gray. The men's bathroom door was closed. A thick, viscous liquid began seeping out from under the door, from the threshold. The liquid slowly spread into the hallway. It smelled like oil, but it also smelled like rotten meat. "Who are you?" Elias shouted. His voice sounded like a stranger's. "What do you want?" The laughter inside stopped. There was complete silence. Then, a very clear, very familiar voice was heard from behind the door. It was Elias' mother's voice. The laughter inside stopped. There was complete silence. Then, from behind the door, a very clear, very familiar voice was heard. It was Elias' mother's voice. His mother, whom he had lost to cancer years ago. "Son, the door is stuck. It's so dark in here, Elias. I'm scared. Please open the door." Elias' eyes filled with tears. His throat tightened. This was impossible. His mother was dead. He had buried her. But the voice, it was so real, so helpless. His mind screamed, "Stop," but his heart had already surrendered. "Mom," he whispered. He grabbed the doorknob. The metal was ice cold. Just as he was about to turn it, the black liquid on the floor stirred. It rose upward, bubbling on the door's surface and forming words. "It's not your mother. It's hunger." Elias pulled his hand back. It felt as if it had been burned. He stumbled backward. The door handle began to turn on its own. Slowly, with a creak, the door opened. There was no bathroom inside. No tiles, no mirrors, no sinks. Behind the door was an endless, blood-red sky and gray ash deserts stretching beneath it. In the middle of the desert, a massive, living tower made of flesh and bone rose up. And at the top of the tower, there were thousands of yellow eyes staring at Elias. Elias screamed and pushed the door. He slammed it shut with all his strength. He locked it. He leaned his back against the door and slid to the floor. What he saw was beyond human comprehension. He understood in that moment. This was not a gas station. This was a thin membrane where worlds intersected, and that membrane had been torn. Time 04:15. Elias had returned behind the counter to that little castle. He wasn't looking anywhere now. He was just watching the clock. 04:15. 1 hour and 45 minutes until sunrise. Suddenly, a sound came from above his head, from the ceiling. Someone was walking on the suspended ceiling. The steps were heavy, and they had many legs. Click, click, click. The footsteps were heavy and multi-legged. Click, click, click. Elias looked up. One of the ceiling tiles shifted slightly. A cloud of dust poured down. Then, a piece of paper drifted down through the ventilation grill in the ceiling. The paper floated through the air. and landed on the counter in front of Elias. Elias picked up the paper. It was the list of rules he had read at the beginning of his shift. His own list. But at the bottom of the list, a new item had been added in fresh, red ink, or perhaps blood. Item 7. Never look at the ceiling. It hates being seen. Elias' gaze involuntarily drifted upward. To look at what was told, not to look at was a person's. Curse. Through the bars of the ventilation grill, he saw a huge, sallow eye staring at him. The pupil was horizontal, like a goat's eye. The eye blinked. A wet sound came out. Elias couldn't stand that yellow eye staring at him from the ceiling any longer. His sanity snapped like a stretched rubber band. Screaming, he left the safe, the shop, everything. He ran to the cold storage room at the back of the shop, that icy room behind the beverage coolers. He pulled the heavy, insulated metal door shut behind him. The magnetic lock clicked shut. It was cold inside. His breath instantly turned to vapor. But this was the freezer room. He pulled the heavy, insulated metal door shut behind him. The magnetic lock clicked shut. It was cold inside. His breath instantly turned to vapor, but it felt safe. It was isolated from the outside world. There were no windows or ventilation holes. Just the sight of shelves full of cola bottles, energy drinks, and beers under the buzzing dim light. Elias sat down on the floor. He pulled his knees up to his chest. He looked at the bottles on the shelves. The liquids inside the glass bottles hadn't frozen, but they looked strange. Elias took a bottle of cola from the nearest shelf. The brand was right. The cap was closed, but there were things floating inside the bottle, hitting the glass. He held the bottle up to the light. Inside the black liquid, tiny white things were floating. They were teeth, human teeth, hundreds of molars, canine teeth, teeth pulled out with their roots, were slowly sinking to the bottom of the carbonated drink. Elias dropped the bottle. It shattered. Black liquid and teeth spilled onto the floor. The liquid began to sizzle and melt on the concrete floor as if it were acid. Elias backed away. He looked at the other bottles. There were clumps of hair in the orange juice. Eyeballs were floating in the water bottles, all staring at Elias. This wasn't a storage room. This was a collection room. This station had been storing what it had taken from passers-by over the years. Here, Elias found an old voice recorder in the corner of the storage room, on top of stacked empty crates. A gray tape recorder from the 90s. It said Shift Report, October 12 on it. Elias pressed the play button with trembling fingers. The tape spun. There was static. Then a voice began to speak. This voice was Elias' own voice. But it was an older Elias, more tired, more exhausted. Elias who had lost hope. Recording 44. I'm still here. I don't know how many days it's been. The sun doesn't rise outside. The clock always. reaches 0600, but then it goes back to 0000. Mr. Miller isn't coming. He never came. He was just part of the station. And the rules, I wrote the rules, so I wouldn't forget. Not to protect myself, but to protect myself from myself. Because when the hunger starts, I can't control what I turn into. The tape stopped. Elias stared at the tape recorder. No, he said. I started today. I saw the ad in the newspaper. This is my first day. He took out the crumpled piece of paper he had found at the start of his shift, the list of rules, from his pocket. He looked at the handwriting to compare it with his own. He took out the label from the key Miller had given him from his pocket. The tail of the T, the curve of the it was the same. Mr. Miller hadn't written the list. Elias had written it. Elias had written the list. Maybe months, maybe years ago. Time 0555. The warehouse door began to be pounded from the outside. Thud, thud, thud. This was not a human pounding. The metal door caved in with each blow. Open the door, Elias, shouted the voice outside. It was Mr. Miller's voice, but it was very loud, as if coming from thousands of speakers at once. Your shift is over. Aren't you coming to get your payment? Cash payment, Elias, just like you wanted. The door hinges began to strain. Screws popped out. Elias knew there was nowhere to run. The only exit from the warehouse was that door. He grabbed the broken glass bottle, a useless weapon. The door came off its hinges with a loud crash and fell inside. Amidst the dust and smoke, Mr. Miller stood. But this was not the man from the job interview. He stretched to the ceiling. His arms touched the floor. His skin was like gray concrete. Where his face should have been, there was a spinning vortex, a black, sucking vortex. And inside that vortex, Elias saw his past. He saw that night, 6 months earlier, the night he was drunk, falling asleep at the wheel of his car, drifting into the opposite lane, hitting that family car coming the other way. He saw the flames. He heard the screams, and he saw his escape. He saw himself leaving them there on the side of Route 9 to die, and running away like a coward into the woods. Miller's fuel station wasn't a workplace. Miller's fuel station was Elias' own creation, a purgatory, a prison his conscience had built to punish him forever. There is no escape from here, Elias, said the entity. Its voice echoed inside his mind. You don't belong here. You are this place. You are this place. With a final survival instinct born of fear, Elias slipped past the entity, between those massive legs, and ran into the store. The store had changed. The shelves stretched on forever. The aisles were miles long, but the exit door was there, that familiar glass door. Outside there was daylight. The sun was rising. The horizon was orange. I did it, Elias shouted. He ran to the door. He unlocked it. He threw himself outside. He breathed the fresh air. deeply into his lungs. He smelled the asphalt. He heard birds singing. He was free. He ran to his car, his Honda Civic. He put the key in the ignition. The engine started. He pressed the gas pedal and drove away from that damn station. He drove at full speed along Route 9. The sun was rising. He turned on the radio. A normal pop song was playing. "It's over," Elias cried. He was laughing. He was laughing hysterically. Tears streamed down his cheeks. "It's over. I'm free." He drove for about 10 minutes. Then he saw a sign ahead. "Miller's Fuel 1 mile." Elias' laughter froze. "I went the wrong way," he said. "I panicked and turned the wrong way. I have to turn back." He turned the steering wheel, made a U-turn. He started driving in the opposite direction. 5 minutes later, he saw the same sign again. "Miller's Fuel 1 mile." No matter which way he went, the road took him there. The world consisted only of that station. Everything else had been erased. And then he felt a change inside the car. A terrible, unbearable hunger began in his stomach. It wasn't his stomach that was hungry, it was his soul. He looked at his hands. They were turning gray. His fingers were growing longer. His knuckles were swelling. His nails were falling off. He looked in the rearview mirror. His face was fatting. His eyes were sinking into sockets. His nose was melting. His mouth was tearing open to his ears. His clothes were merging with his body, turning into a black, dark substance. Elias tried to scream, but he had no mouth. He had no voice. He could only make a gurgling sound. The car took control of itself. The steering wheel melted. The console changed. It was no longer a Honda Civic. It had turned into a black, unbranded sedan with pitch black windows. Pump number 3. The car entered the station beyond Elias' control. The clock read midnight. The sun had never risen. That orange light was the reflection of the station's neon sign. The car stopped in front of pump number 3. Inside, behind the glass, there was someone new. A young man. He was wearing Elias' plaid shirt. It was Elias, but his memory had been erased. A new Elias, full of hope. The monster Elias inside the car banged on the window. Knock, knock, knock. He wanted to say, "Run." He wanted to say, "This is a trap." He wanted to say, "Don't come here. Don't take the job." But only a terrible, raspy voice came from outside. The new Elias inside looked at him in horror. He saw that pure fear in his eyes. Then, obeying a rule he remembered, he ducked his head and hid under the counter. Monster Elias stretched out his long, gray arm. He took the pump. He didn't need gasoline. He needed pain. He needed the fear of his own past to keep the cycle going. He filled the tank. He sucked up the lights. He sucked up new Elias' life. He put the pump back. The car moved. It blended into the darkness, but it didn't drive away. It just parked among the shadows, among the corn in the field, waiting for the next shift, waiting to scare the next Elias. The new Elias inside emerged from under the counter. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, trembling. Just inside, the new Elias emerged from under the counter. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, trembling. Just a dream, he said to himself. Just exhaustion. Then the phone rang. Ring 1, ring 2. Elias reached for the phone. And the cycle began again. That cursed symphony that would go on forever. If you pass Route 9 tonight and your gas light comes on, don't stop, no. Matter how tired you are, keep driving. Because there's still an open position at Miller gas station. And Elias is waiting for his replacement.